Hey there, and welcome to That News You Care About, a weekly video game news show from the folks over at That Nerdy Site. Today is Tuesday, October 12th of 2021, and I am one of your hosts, Logan Wilkinson. Joining me this week is my Phoenix son, Trevor Starkey.
Hello.
How you doing, Trev?
Doing all right. I am I am off this week in between jobs, so I'm just kind of relaxing, enjoying as much gaming as I can. I went and saw a James Bond movie this last weekend, so I'm waiting for you to see it so we can talk about it.
Absolutely.
So get on that.
This weekend. Mm-hmm.
Other than that, we were just we spent a good 30 minutes talking about Life is Strange before this because I just finished Before the Storm. I've been playing some Forza. I'm gonna try and probably spend some time with like Psychonauts 2 the rest of this week. I think that's kind of the next one on my plan set. And yeah, just kind of enjoy some games before starting the new job next week.
Hell yeah, there you go. I've been playing some Alan Wake. And then other than that, very excited for James Bond. Had a chance to potentially see it this weekend, and then reminded Travier that it's a nearly 3-hour-long movie, and it's probably better to do it on just an actual weekend day. But very excited. Heard an interesting mixture of things. So not really sure what to make of it yet. Also want to give a shout out. That's why I wear my little Cooking with Greg shirt to Greg and Jen Miller over there for the new arrival of baby Benjamin.
Yep.
Very exciting stuff. Also, Gary Whitta had a surprise baby.
Gary Whitta had a surprise baby. Sancho
Lucy,
West had a kid. Like today.
Lucy the Lion announced that her and her partner are expecting in, I think, March of next year as well. It was a crazy baby-filled news weekend.
Yeah, Jess and Jess Cogswell.
Yes,
they're also expecting. So yeah.
So yeah, everyone had a baby last week. Or
lots of pandemic babies. Flowing through.
So that is very, very exciting. The first kind of funny baby from the main crew, we'll say, to avoid Gay Ritter's earlier kids. But we are talking about none of that this week. Instead, we are talking a lot about Twitch, in fact. They had a pretty quiet week, Trevor. I don't think too much happened on their end, aside from a massive security breach that also leaked out the source code for Twitch as well, which is maybe the most mind-boggling aspect of this still to me, as well as listing off like the, amounts streamers got from streaming, all different breakdowns that led to some pretty good memes as well of where people fall on that list. I don't even know really where to begin, so I'll just throw it to you, Trevor. What kind of, when you first heard the news of the scale, I think, of the Twitch leak and Twitch hack, kind of what were your initial impressions?
I mean, so yeah, I first saw stuff break on it basically the night after we recorded last week. So like Tuesday night of last week.
Classic.
I saw like an article go up about it was either like Nibelian or Wario64 like tweeting somebody's article that like Twitch has been hacked and has been dumped out online or something like that. And I saw that before I went to bed, and then I just kind of was like, oh, that sucks. And then went to bed. And then like the next day, the story had like taken hold, and more people were looking at it, and more people were diving into like the actual hack and seeing kind of all the data that was out there and stuff, and started blowing up. I admittedly, until like we kind of settled on that being like the topic of the show for this week, hadn't really dug into any of that, because like part of it is like I don't like obviously like it's incredibly like sensitive information that has been shared for all like the creators that all their financial stuff being thrown out there for everyone to see. So I wasn't trying to feed those stories with clicks and stuff. Like, I was seeing stuff, on Twitter and stuff, and seeing like, hey, turns out, women only, make up like 1% of the top streamers or whatever. Like I saw that and I was like, yeah, I mean that doesn't surprise me at all. That like, no, sadly, like there was just a lot of like confirmation of what I think a lot of us probably already suspected, that like, hey, the hot tub streamers that, all these boys are getting really upset about and stuff like that don't really move the needle on the finances and stuff. And hey, it turns out that just because women have boobs doesn't mean that they're suddenly getting all this money coming
All
in
the money.
to Twitch. So like, I saw those kinds of stories and tweets going around and was like, yeah, none of that really surprising me. But the bigger issues of like, oh yeah, all the underlying source code and architecture and stuff, I'm like, well, that also doesn't surprise me that they were so insecure and so easily, you know, attacked like that, given how slow to act they have been on so many other things. Especially like, I mean, most recently, of course, with like the hate raid stuff. There were Streamlabs was out there, jumping out there and saying like, hey, here's how we can protect streamers and stuff. Finally Twitch got around like a couple weeks ago or something like that to like, hey, here are the new tools we're implementing. Still, isn't the fix that a lot of people were asking for. And so like there's now a whole, undercurrent of, hey, is that fix even sustainable given like this breach? I mean, I like, admittedly, right before we hopped on to record, I basically was like, I should go log into Twitch and change my password, and
I did it
also remove all of my, like, I basically unsubscribed from everybody that I was still subscribed to, because I'm almost never on Twitch anymore these days anyway. So yeah, like the few channels I was still subscribed to, I unsubscribed, and it was like, why are you going? And I like clicked other in kind of each one. It was like, I don't trust Twitch with my information. So like removed all that and then deleted my my credit card information out of their system. So like, it's just not a good vote of confidence in this, especially because they're fucking Amazon. Like they have Amazon money. Yeah. They could easily be, more secure, more bolstered up. They already take 50% cut from most of their, their subscriptions and all this stuff anyway. So like, and also I guess even after the hate raids, I had seen another thing going around in between the hate raids and this breach that was like, they were testing a new feature that is basically like enticing or encouraging viewers of a channel to spend bits to like raise visibility for the channel that they're viewing, and none of that money goes to the actual channel holder. It's just like, it's Twitch preying on viewers that want to take ownership of like, their favorite streamers or something, and basically saying, hey, if you give us money, we'll increase visibility, and we'll, your money will go towards boosting these guys in the algorithm, but they're not going to get any actual direct financial, so it's like, just so many of Twitch's decisions are made for as much money in their pockets and as little care to the streamers as possible. And the fact that they were so easily breached, I think, is that as well. Like they didn't invest in security, and so they got their ass handed to them.
I think one of the things you touched on that I wanted to delve deeper into, that I also saw float around a lot, is obviously the dynamic or the myth, I think, around like women streamers on Twitch raking in all the money, right, because they have boobs, basically. And I saw a number of people kind of, say, well, at least we can put that one to bed. It's been one of the things that has most boggled my mind for years now, right? Like I mean, like, obviously I can't understand the level of hate and just like anger people have at women just for existing. But it is such a bizarre thing to get so worked up and so upset and so angry that these people are just streaming games on Twitch for no other reason than just because they're women, and then make the next jump of, and they have to make a lot of money because everyone's got to be super horny for this kind of content, right? I've never been able to, I think, follow those jumps across the step with them.
I mean, they're just showing them their whole ass when they do that. They're
right.
Like,
Yeah,
I'm super horny for this content, so
yes.
like I'm angry that like they have boobs and can use those assets that I can't or whatever. Like, it's like, shut up, dude.
It's such a bizarre thing, and I mean, obviously the video game industry is rife with problems of like toxic masculinity and sexism, but I think what makes it particularly frustrating on Twitch is, like you said, this sort of feeling that nothing is being done to combat it at all, and nothing is being really done to prevent it, whether it is, harassment against female streamers, whether it's the surge of hate raids we've seen the last couple of months. It always feels like a very belated, like, oh yeah, here's some changes that might help out. I don't know. And it's like, Twitch, for better or worse, is the platform for streaming in the games industry at this point in time, right? Like, Mixer, rest in peace, right? Like, YouTube gaming is just not the same thing. Like, Twitch is still the standard barrier. And so they've got such a responsibility to actually take these claims even moderately seriously, right? These actual issues that are plaguing large segments of the community, and they've just seemed so blasé about it for years. And then to kind of get the, streamer number breakdowns and see, yeah, like, the people who dominate, Twitch earnings are, as you'd imagine, probably straight white guys who are probably in their 20s, maybe 30s now if they've been doing it for a little bit. And that's pretty much it. That's the list, right? And so it's not surprising, but it is still disappointing, and even more so with the boundless potential of other creators who could just as easily be in those ranks if they were given a fair shake and a fair crack at it, and if they weren't constantly hounded by harassment that forces how many untold creators to just quit streaming altogether, right? Because it's not worth it, especially when they're first starting on the platform.
Yeah. One of the things that always frustrates me when these kinds of stories come out is you hear the stories, and one of the Verge articles you kind of brought to the table, I think, references a few of these kinds of claims, like the idea that so many of these issues that Twitch just continually suffers are brought up in the meetings. Like, there are people at Twitch that are trying to say, hey, if you introduce this raids thing, it's probably going to be problematic. Because like the namesake is, not, it's not like raids are commonly a good thing in sure. history. And especially in gamer culture, like, yeah, raids are going to probably be like used for bad and can potentially be used for bad. And that just gets dismissed time and time again by management and higher ups, and in favor of, well, it's going to bring us more money because it's going to keep people engaged on the platform or whatever. And they make decisions, as we've seen, like, a lot continuing to come out with like Facebook right now, as well. Like, they don't care about safety. They care about profits, and they care about engagement that will bolster those profits. And so it's incredibly infuriating when, like, and I mean, admittedly, I've seen, a number of people come and go from Twitch over the years. Like, people, in other aspects of the industry go to Twitch because the pay is probably really good. They, get there and then they get disenfranchised by it and leave because of probably these kinds of frustrations and concerns that don't ever get addressed. And so that's another element of like people banging the drum and saying, hey, there are problems here, and then Twitch just not responding to those problems, and
not taking them seriously.
The issues kind of just compound upon themselves.
Yeah, It is one I think that it is both so easy and so hard at the same time to see how things get better, right? And what they can do to make things better. Like the answers are pretty simple. It's just made hard by the reality that I don't know how much support, right, or buy-in there is, not necessarily from Twitch at large, but certainly the people in positions of power who can actually influence things in dramatic and meaningful ways. I don't know how much they really have support or buy-in for doing things that will better protect creators and better support, marginalized communities, and better just more encompass the safety and well-being of all the people on Twitch that come there to play video games or to paint or to do anything on that platform, and just want to do it because they like it and don't want to be hounded and harassed and run out of this space that should just be a platform for people to do things they love with people who might be interested in that, right? That's ostensibly the point and reason for being of Twitch, and it has just increasingly kind of become corrupted from that point. And the lackadaisical approach to the security and to the potential security of creators and users of the platform, I think with the security breach is another testament to just what will make us the most money, even if it comes at the price of safety and user security.
Yeah, and it sucks that like you said, like Mixer's no longer in the game, so there's nobody even really like. It's akin to when WWF/E buys out WCW, and now they have no competition, and so the product suffers for many years.
Man can just go wild.
It's the competition at least forced Twitch to have to keep an eye on what was going on, and now Mixer's out of the game, and as you said, kind of like YouTube is not like the gulf between streaming on Twitch versus streaming on YouTube is just like miles and miles and miles of a chasm. And so it's unfortunate that there isn't basically another player in the game that's forcing any kind of innovation or like demanding these kind of things. So hey, maybe some savvy tech upstart kid will just say like, hey, I can take the source code here and make it better, and
Sure.
and do something, make a new platform that improves on Twitch. But yeah, it's incredibly frustrating, and I'm just like, I'm increasingly tired of like just big companies in general like fucking everybody over because they're not even abiding by their own like terms and conditions and security audits and stuff like that. And yep, it's just the latest instance, and a whole bunch of people got like their private financial information thrown out, and the fact that the hackers basically said that this is like what part one of the hack is what they've revealed. So presumably there's more information out there that they're sitting on to dump when they want to make Twitch feel the pain again.
But we will transition to a lighter, more enjoyable second story here, somewhat, which is G4 is back, baby.
For reals this time.
For reals, actually, though, guys. Don't worry. G4 is coming back next month, actually. Coming back very soon. And if that doesn't get your 2006 Love and Self excited, I don't know what will. Trevor, what is your history with G4? Because I feel like you might have either fit in right at the perfect time or come in too late for kind of the heyday of G4 as a thing, as a cultural entity.
Yeah, I think we talked about this back when I think they announced that they were coming back. Like back when kind of like the Twitter revived and all that stuff, and they started announcing, like guest hosts and bringing back shows and stuff. And I was never a G4 person. I never had access to it. It was not like one of the.
Didn't have Spike TV.
It I mean, G4 and Spike TV were different channels, which is like one of those things that I found out after the fact. Like I had memories where I was like, oh, like G4, were they the ones that did like American Ninja Warrior? No, that was Spike.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, it was just like in my like cable growing up, we didn't have it. And then yeah, like by the time I mean, like when they were really kind of hitting their heyday, I was in college, didn't have cable, just kind of
Mm-hmm.
had like, basic and like played video games and stuff. Like I just wasn't really watching TV during a lot of my college years. And so the only time I really spent any time with G4 was the summer after I graduated college in 2008, because I was working for the Santa Fe Opera, and they put us up in like apprentice housing basically, and the housing had cable that had G4, and so like I spent some times during that summer like watching Attack of the Show and stuff like that. But like it this iconic touchstone that like so many people have. Like I remember like passing by Adam Sessler at a PAX or something one year and just being like, oh, I have no idea who that guy is. But like people were like clearly very excited for or whatever, and then like realizing after the fact, oh, he was a big G4 guy. Okay, cool. Like that was my first interaction with Adam Sessler was like seeing him at an event in 2016, I think. And like I just didn't really I didn't have that touchstone of like I knew Kevin Pereira and Olivia Munn from Attack of the Show, and I like remember seeing clips of their stuff before ever really watching the show, but I just didn't have a I didn't have like a way to really experience G4 in its heyday. But it is always fascinating because like again going back to like PAX panels, so many people that I see on those panels and then in the industry now, like when they talk about how they got their start at G4 and as like, producers and behind the scenes stuff at G4, it's like, oh, that's like surreal that like that's we're far enough removed from that as a thing that those were like kind of people's first steps in the industry, and then now they're out doing their own thing or have their own big channels or whatever. And yeah, it's just a like seeing like the Venn diagrams of people that I can like kind of like tie back to G4 is fascinating now. But yeah, I just didn't
Mm-hmm.
really ever have like that personal connection myself with it.
It's interesting because I feel like I'm closer to you than I am to Frank, maybe, who I think has really strong G4 memories, or a lot of like Cam Hawkins, I know is really excited about G4 coming back, right? And I watched G4, right? But I don't really have too many strong connections with it, if only because a lot of the shows didn't click for me, right? Like I didn't really click with Attack of the Show, right? I didn't really click with a lot of kind of the scripted content on the channel. I remember as a kid thinking this is really cool that there is a television video game channel. That was a really cool idea for me. I liked the idea of G4 a lot. I think just in terms of like the execution of it and in terms of what they were doing, there wasn't that much that actually spoke to me, right? And so like I knew Adam Sessler, right? I knew kind of all the original crew of the G4 kind of team, but none of them kind of spoke directly to me, um, which I think fed into when I was introduced to, the Game Scoop podcast Beyond crew, right? I mean, around like, 2009, 2010, why that one clicked so much more for me, right? Because I was just looking for an outlet in a lot of ways. And G4, they were older, right? And their sense of humor didn't really match with my sense of humor as much. I think the cheesiness that they kind of embraced didn't really click with me at the time. But in terms of being just like an institution, I mean, the impact as a like junior high, high school kid, probably more high school, of like seeing this is a legit video game news channel, right? And especially like when they would do live from like E3, that was super cool, right? And I feel like a lot of people our age when we think of E3, we think in a lot of ways like seeing it for the first time on G4, right? And seeing Adam Susser at E3 and it being this kind of mythological event, this being this kind of otherworldly thing. And even now, even though E3's kind of become so has morphed into something almost completely different, right? You still have that image of like Adam Sessler and Blair and Sarah and Jess all at E3 doing, interviews and previews and speaking from the show floor. And there was something exciting, but more than that, sort of redeeming about seeing these people do it on TV, right? And this being a legitimate thing, especially in like, the mid to late 2000s when video games were kind of having an identity crisis about being taken seriously as like an art form and an industry. And to see that they were on TV, to see that they did have their own channel, I felt like it gave so much more credence and credibility to the idea that like, we are an actual thing and video games are art and they do bless me, they do belong in the same wavelength as movies and TV and comics and music and all these other kind of things. And so that's what made me the most excited. That's what made me always kind of jazzy. G4 still kicking it was it's another day that, the longer they're on TV, the more it'll just become an accepted thing. And we might get news on G4 that maybe do click more with me, or new people showing up on G4 that maybe I'll identify with more. And so I think G4 is cool in that way. In terms of what I think G4 will look like in 2021, I have almost no idea. Because the industry has changed so much, not an insignificant amount, because of their influence and influence of these people who have all gone on to do their own things in varying degrees of success, that I'm not really sure what it'll look like, right? Like, I'm not really sure what it'll be, right? Like, these, certainly Adam and Blair and a lot of the, OG crew are, now in their 40s or older. And they're going to have different perspectives, right? And the new people they're going to bring in are going to be very different. And I'll be curious to see how they adapt to games coverage and games content in 2021 and 2022 versus 2008. Like you said, I'll be very curious to see how they try to differentiate themselves, how they kind of try to nail down that brand, what they look like. But I also think that it's exciting, and any time that, games are given a platform to showcase, the fact that they're just as worthy of attention as movies or, television coverage, I take that as a step forward, right? Like, we should be on par. We make more. I mean, the video games make more as an industry than movies do times a lot, just from Call of Duty alone, basically. And so I think I'm always here for, some level of excitement and hope. And, I'm ready to be wowed, even if that wowment is mainly more of just like, oh, that's cool, that's neat, and it's not my thing. G4 being around, I know, gets a lot of people excited, and I'm excited for them, and I'm excited for see what they do.
Yeah, I think on bouncing off that last point, I don't think the issue that G4 is going to run into necessarily is like that there isn't an audience for it still. It's like the issue that I foresee is that audience isn't now and wasn't really at the time either a TV audience. Like, this is an audience that watches things online on their phones, on demand or on streaming, options. They're not going to tune in to a dedicated channel for, these kinds of shows. So it's I don't know what that business model is going to really look like or how that's going to work. Like, TV is it's a medium on its way down, as we see, repeatedly with the advent and just disbursement of like the streaming platforms and stuff. So if this was like a like, hey, G4 is coming back and it's going to be its own, $4.99 a month platform or something like that, that would have made more sense to me than this big, like, hey, we're going to do all these resources and we're going to put it towards TV production that I just don't think that's not where the audience for G4 is. And they touch on in kind of these, continued announcements that they were going to also do, a ton of stuff on Twitch. They're going to do stuff on like their dedicated YouTube channels and stuff like that. And so maybe they'll do the same kind of thing of like, Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, where it's like, hey, there's the HBO show, but most of that you can also get, on YouTube for free or something.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And so, yeah, maybe they'll start, going that route. But yeah, just the idea that they are like, I mean, because we can look at Ven was a channel that basically came back and launched last year, like a little bit, I think, before the G4 announcement kind of came out, and it was the same kind of thing of like, okay, but like, who's the audience for Ven? And they, I mean, basically, like within a year have, if not completely folded, they've drastically, reduced their output and they've laid off a lot of the people they brought on as hosts and stuff like that. And so I think it's the same kind of thing of just like the people who are trying to make these things happen are a little too beholden to the old form of media, maybe in that, in the pursuit of like, we should be as respected. It's like, sure, yes, we should be as respected, but like, don't expect, the 60-year-olds that are actually still watching TV these days to like suddenly turn on G4 instead of CBS or something like that. Like, that's just, I think they will really, their audience is going to show up for the streaming things in the same way that like, Jeff Keighley is getting more people tuning into the Game Awards every year on Twitch than he ever did when it was on Spike TV. So I just think like, meet your audience where they are and don't waste all this time and resources going into these other, options. But
I think the two things that you touched on that I'm also curious about, right, is I wonder how much of the decision to be on TV is made in the realm of it's an easier sell to advertisers and executives, right? To be like, yeah, we're going to be on TV and also streaming, but TV, right? Like, it's maybe easier for them to wrap their head around that because a lot of, obviously, executives and advertisers are older men who understand that world better, right? And even if, the team behind G4 maybe understands intrinsically that they're going to make more revenue and have more eyes on the streaming side of things and that kind of thing, getting a push from that. And also maybe recognizing the fact that, the teenagers and 20-somethings and 30-something guys that would have been watching it back in the day are now going to be 20, 30, 40 years old and are going to be more settled in their lives and maybe do have, a family and TVs and cable and that kind of stuff. And so trying to get them that way as well, right? Like it definitely seems like it is a diversification of ways to reach out to their audience. I 100% expect them to do the John Oliver Last Week Tonight thing. In fact, if they don't, it is such an obvious, huge miss for them that I would be so shocked. Like, that is absolutely what they should be doing because it is so successful for Last Week Tonight. And would be such an instant, easy, obvious thing for a G4 type channel to do to keep them in the conversation, right? And keep them on the timeline and make it easier to share to more people, to get more people's eyes on it and kind of keep them in the conversation, keep them in the Twitter feed, keep them on the like Instagram channels. Like, it's such an obvious thing to do. And if they don't, it's such a wasted opportunity. I would love to have been a fly on the wall of like all of the meetings where I'm sure these points are discussed back and forth of how much should invest on TV versus how much should invest in streaming versus YouTube versus, yada, yada, yada.
I mean, it's like, as much as like I don't care about or have any desire to learn about or like dive into the platform, like G4 needs to be a TikTok platform more than it needs to be on TV. Like that's where its eyes are going to be. And I'll be curious what their social plan. I mean, I like if they don't have a TikTok plan, and they probably already do. They probably are already on TikTok, just like they've already been doing social stuff and YouTube stuff long before the official channel stuff. I just don't, I don't follow them enough anyway to know really what those what their audience looks like on those platforms. But like that's the 2021 audience that they, that they probably need to be applying for more than, again, like, they've partnered with Verizon, Fios, and Cox, and Xfinity TV. Cool. Like, good luck getting the numbers there. But I mean, you do bring up a good point in that. Yeah, I mean, advertising money on TV is probably like way more reliable and way more, for that level, like easy to sell in buckets of advertising time, compared to like, hey, we're just going to throw up random ads on YouTube that may or may not apply to the content that you're watching.
Yes, I'll be curious, but otherwise, Trevor, you have any final thoughts on G4?
No, I mean, I'm excited for Xavier Woods. I hope he has a great time with his show, whatever he's going to end up doing there. That was cool when he got kind of announced as like the first new host. But yeah, I mean, like, again, with no real like personal connection to the original run of G4, I'm kind of like, whatever. I mean, like, seeing that they've got Xavier Woods, they've got people like Golden Boy coming on, who, like, again, I don't really follow his scene, but he's clearly a name in the esports commentator space. The Completionist is going to be doing stuff for G4. Like, I sometimes wonder if they're going to partner with the people who have been doing this in the interim, and like, I would not be at all surprised if Kinda Funny manages to sell a show to G4, or Rooster Teeth sells a show to G4, because G4, especially if they're going to have TV, like, they've got, you assume, 12 plus hours a day of content that they need to like be pumping out. That's not just reruns of, whatever syndicated stuff they can get, and then, infomercials overnight or something like that. So presumably they're going to need some kind of content, either short form stuff, that can kind of run in 10-minute chunks or whatever in between shows. Or, maybe they do like, hey, let's do, I mean, like Kinda Funny Games Daily is doing what G4 was doing kind of in their day. And so like, they obviously, like, that doesn't have like a huge audience, but like, it has, when they have their studio, it has like production value and stuff. So maybe when Kinda Funny gets their new studio up and running and can kind of move into that, maybe they, they have kind of partnerships in the pipeline with, because obviously like, that's I mean, like, Blair is, friends with a ton of people in the industry that can do that. Like, maybe IGN puts a show on G4 or something like that. GameSpot does a show, like the internet companies that are already trying to diversify, or have already tried in the past. Like, IGN already did a TV show, a few years ago on Disney or whatever, to try and like prove the concept. So yeah, like, maybe they do that. And it's always fascinating, because I remember, 5-6 years ago, having this idea of like basically wanting to create a Twitch channel that was programmed like TV, of like, okay, we're going to do it in hour-long or 2-hour chunks or something like that. And hey, streamer A is going to be in, and they're going to have like their schedule, and they're going to come in and they're going to do their shows, and then they're going to hand it off to somebody else to come in. And doing that as like basically a programming block for just a single Twitch channel. And like, seeing companies now come in and try and do that, I'm like, man, if only I had like venture capital 5 years ago when I had these ideas and these pitches. Cause seeing Ven do it, and then now seeing G4 come back and probably going to do similar. It'll be interesting to see kind of how how this audience votes, because again, like, I mean, tying it to the first story, like Twitch audience clearly goes to like the personalities that they like, and some of those, rise to the top, um, and they don't really care what they're playing or what they're doing,
Yeah.
and sometimes they don't care how good or shitty a person that is, and it really comes down to like, does Twitch keep them on the platform, or does that person take a buyout to move to YouTube or in those days Mixer, and hope that their audience comes with them? I'll be interesting to see what the G4 product ends up looking like starting on November 16th.
Agreed. The final thing I will say is shout to Tim Geddes for kind of doing that a little bit with Kind of Funny back in the day with the morning show leading into all the different things of sunsetted shows as Tim Geddes slowly kills more and more Kind of Funny shows and creates more and more. That poor man. But
I mean, but even that speaks to like, it is like the algorithms are all changing so rapidly that like people have to be incredibly nimble. And I don't know if a company the size of G4 will be able to be as nimble as it will need to be, or if it'll end up kind of suffering a lot of the same issues that like, TV, channels have and stuff like that, of like, hey, the audience just isn't here, so I guess we got to cancel this thing, but we don't have something to put in its place that is the hot newness or whatever. Like how quickly can they jump on that? Like, if they had, invested in a Among Us game or something like that, or not an Among Us game, like an Among Us kind of show or something like that, you do that, and then by the time you actually get that up in production, that's no longer the game of the moment and stuff. So what is, what does that look like in an industry that's having to, always kind of change on a dime?
I think that is where the flexibility of the streaming side of things does kick in, right? Like they can just have the host play like, today we're going to play Among Us, or we're going to play Fall Guys, or we're going to play those kind of things and talk and do that. Like they have that flexibility there, right? And I am curious what their schedule will look like if they have, in terms of like how fluid the daily streaming side of things can be on like TV. But yeah, I mean, we're just going to kind of have to see here in about a month what they kind of open with, and also recognize that the G4 that will launch in November of 2021 will almost certainly be very different than the G4 by May of next year, let alone October of next year, as they kind of will naturally kind of undergo growing pains and see what works and doesn't work, and the chemistry between certain hosts and the shows that kind of naturally evolve over time that you would expect in any sort of television or non-television kind of creative outlet. But moving to shout-outs, Trevor, do you have any shout-outs for us this week?
Nothing comes to mind. Again, I mean, apart from the shout-out to Greg and Jen and Benjamin Miller and Gary and Leah Witta and everybody else, everybody out there having babies and making moves and doing all cool stuff in the in our friends in the industry.
Absolutely. I will echo that, and we're just gonna wrap right on into the wrap up here. If you like what you heard, you can go support us over at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, like all of our wonderful patrons and supporters have. Their support means the world to us and helps keep the lights on and make shows like this and like that D+ show happen. You can also go support us over at any podcast service around the globe of your choice. Like, subscribe, and share with your friends and fam and grannies. Rate and review us on iTunes. Give us 5 stars. It helps with the algorithms that we've talked a lot about today and gets more eyes and ears on us. You can also go over to youtube.com/thatnerdysite. And like and subscribe there as well. Help boost us up as we get to our next milestones on that platform. Go watch all of the videos over there. Every podcast goes live on YouTube with the video version. And we have bi-weekly Let's Play episodes as well. I had to think about the right way to phrase that. Every Tuesday and Thursday. So go check out all of those. Otherwise, you can go over to thatnerdysite.com to check out all the latest written content over there. Otherwise, You can go find Trevor at Trevor J. Starkey on the internet. Trevor, anything that you want to plug?
I need to figure out how to get like electroshock on you for every time you like bang a desk, because I just like hear that in the audio. I'm like, oh, that's not going to sound great. And then also every time you say otherwise, I just need to get that out of your system. But the actual plugs this week and next week are Life is Strange Before the Storm Let's Plays. So you can go check those out. And then also on that D Plus show, we are doing Halloween month. So go check that out as well.
I will echo that. Go check out all of the Let's Plays that Trevor is doing for Life is Strange Before the Storm. Episode 1 of that went live yesterday as of listening to this. And episode 2 goes live tomorrow as of listening to this. And then the third episode and epilogue will be next week's Tuesday and Thursday episodes.
Yeah. Also, That Nerdy Site show had its 100th episode this week. So everybody from the site except Logan came on, and we talked about a handful of things. Then we kind of did like a little retrospective on like, the first couple years of That Nerdy Site. So go check that out as well. Big milestone episodes. Those are always
100%.
Fun.
Yeah, I will be on That Nerdy Site show in the next few weeks talking about James Bond and kind of reminiscing on my own, especially with the anniversary coming up. We will not be bereft of reminiscences between me and Trevor and company. In that vein, I will also echo checking out that D Plus show. I love a good anniversary theme month, and so the second month of doing Halloween specials for that D Plus show, I do love it. We've got a couple episodes already in the can. We've got a few more ready to come that I personally am very excited about. So keep tuned for that. There have already been some good episodes so far in the month. Otherwise, there's one last one for you, Trevor. You can go find That Nerdy Site at That Nerdy Site all across the internet and the globe. For myself, for Trevor, for all of us here at That Nerdy Site, play your games and be good to each other.